In early 2024, hospitals across America felt quiet, but not in a good way.
Prescription systems failed, billing systems froze, pharmacies couldn't fill orders. And behind it all,
A single point of failure. One company connected to hundreds of millions of lives.
this is true cyber crimes where we dissect the hacks, breaches, and ransomware attacks that cost real lives, real dollars, and real peace of mind.
I'm Chris Kuselis.
And I'm Nick Santilli. Today we're telling the story of how a single ransomware attack on Change Healthcare rippled across the US healthcare system and why our most vital infrastructures might be more fragile than we think. Change Healthcare isn't exactly a household name, but it's in nearly every healthcare transaction in the country.
It may not be a household name, but it has over 15 billion healthcare transactions a year. That's billing, eligibility checks, priority authorizations, claims, prescriptions, all of it.
And Change was acquired by the United Health Group, which might be a little bit more brand recognition, back in 2022, and then merged under their Optum arm. But they kept running the pipelines that connect providers, payers, and pharmacies.
So while you're sitting in the waiting room thinking about your copay, there's a good chance Change is handling the data underneath it all.
So, in short, Change isn't a vendor. You're not going to end up in one of their waiting rooms. It's a part of the healthcare nervous system.
And in February 2024, someone cut that cord.
So, February 21st of 2024, Change Healthcare detected suspicious activity on their systems. Within hours, systems went dark.
And this name's starting to be pretty prevalent in our conversations here. The culprit, a ransomware group called Alpha V, also known as Black Cat. It seems like they were discussing them in every episode over and over.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like a drinking game. every time Black Cat comes up in the as the culprit. This wasn't a spray and pray ransomware attack, though. It was targeted. Precision infiltration, in fact. They got in through a Citrix remote access via stolen credentials. So let's kind of look at what the anatomy of a ransomware is just for a moment. The initial access is often via phishing or exposed remote access points. In this case, it was compromised credentials for a Citrix server via Citrix portal, and it lacked multi-factor authentication.
MFA, wow, we've heard that before too.
Should we start doing bingo cards for this?
Yeah, right.
I feel like it. So once they got in, right, they used this remote access, no second factor to authenticate. So once they're in, the attackers were able to move silently. We call this living off of the land, where they mapped the systems, they identified data, they disabled defenses, probably left breadcrumbs to be able to let themselves back in if they lost access, and they went unnoticed for 9 days. So before they encrypted all this data, they stole it. So they kind of made their own backup. Who knows what we'll talk about what they do with it, but think of it like duplicating the vault before locking it. Once they did that, then they encrypt all of the enterprise files on the the Change Healthcare side of things, crashed their services and demanded payment. In this case, $22 million for the ransom.
Big bucks. So the attackers encrypted key systems, billing, payment, pharmacy processing. Pharmacies couldn't confirm insurance. Providers couldn't get claims. The dominoes quickly fell. This was a supply chain attack. Other entities were affected because the cyber attack on one of their suppliers.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to that. They're the nervous system. They're not the brand name to all this. They're what the plumbing of all of these healthcare providers. So as a result, over 190 million Americans, that's over half of the United States population, were ultimately impacted. Some hospitals resorted to spreadsheets. Pharmacies filled prescriptions manually. One doctor called it digital triage, which I think is actually funny because really it was more like analog triage, right? Like
Yeah.
they weren't really
Back
using
to
the digital
paper
tools
and
they were
pencil.
used to. Yeah,
And
knuckle busters practically to take
and kind of
payments.
to your point, 190 million Americans. Should anybody have this much control? As I mean, I think we can talk about that later. But
Yeah, yeah,
um, and while the patients suffered, Change Healthcare paid.
yeah. Allegedly, they paid a $22 million ransom in Bitcoin in order to get the decryptor and try to prevent the release of all that personal data, personal health data.
But then things got even messier. After the payment, Alpha V vanished, pulling an apparent exit scam. Then a second actor, Ransom Hub. Well, this is great. We got a new company going after people. Ransom Hub appeared. Now they're threatening to release the data anyway, even after they paid.
Yeah, I remember when this was all unfolding, and ultimately there's no honor among thieves, right?
Yeah.
I've said this from early on in my cybersecurity career. Just because you pay to decrypt it doesn't mean they're not going to do something with the data they've already stolen,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't mean they even have to give you the decryption key if you sell it. But I digress. The one thing I kind of wanted to call out here is um, this when this unfolded. Yeah, it was Black Cat Alpha, that initially perpetrated this ransomware attack, but I believe they were actually they were taking the the payload, the ransomware payload from Ransom Hub, if I remember the details correctly. And so you've got kind of like a primary and a subcontractor,
Hmm.
if you will. And in this case, when the $22 million ransom was paid, it was paid to one of them, right? In this case, Black Cat. And there's suspicion that Black Cat didn't then pay the percentage to
Ransom
Ransom
Hub.
Hub, which is why Ransom Hub suddenly was like, well, wait a second, we've got the data from this that we
So they
put in
put a lien
place.
against their property, just like
Right,
a bank
right.
would do to a contract. Well, hey, listen, we didn't get our money. We're putting a lien
Yeah.
on your property.
It's
Great.
it's a business, right? This is
It is.
all business. We can relate it anyway. So yeah, no honor among thieves.
So it was really double exfiltration because they got the money and now they're going to try to, scam them out of some more
Yeah.
because they're going to sell it. But so what data was stolen? Patient names, addresses, dates of birth, medical record, prescription histories, insurance IDs, possibly social security numbers and more financial information.
Yeah, healthcare data is, and we've talked about this in the 23andMe uh, uh, recording that we did. It's some of the most valuable information on the dark web. It's not just identity theft; it's insurance fraud, it's medical extortion. It can even create synthetic identities.
Yeah, so your blood type could be sold alongside your bank account, and you know why is healthcare such a prime target? It's really a one-stop shop for thieves, as we were talking about. It get your full name, your birth certificate, social security number, addresses, more and more and more prescription information. Um, Plus, there's just so much more value. If you look at a stolen credit card on the black market, it usually sells for $5 to $10 because once that credit card's stolen, if it hasn't been already reported, as soon as you start to get those fraudulent transactions, they shut it down. Well, a full medical record can go for 250 to $1,000. Healthcare is just a great target for criminals because they're really complex systems with outdated tech. They're huge attack surfaces. You're looking at hospitals, clinics, insurers, third parties, and it's a life or death urgency. So it encourages that ransom payment, just like they did, Change did.
It's a perfect
Um,
storm,
yeah,
perfect storm of all the things.
the Biden administration called the attack a threat to national security, and it really is. Congress demanded answers, and the HHS launched an investigation.
Yeah, lawsuits followed. Providers filed class actions arguing that Change Healthcare's weak security failed them, and in fact, this was an instance where the CEO of Change Healthcare actually was um, uh, in court identified as liable for this, right? Ultimately rolled up to him,
Yeah.
and it triggered a bit of a reevaluation for executive leadership to consider how they personally can be held accountable for security failures of their organizations. So
And and
maybe a positive to come out of this is a little bit more attention to these things.
And cybersecurity, we've talked about it over and over again. It's not just up to the IT. It's an executive level board level decision that has to be made, and they're holding them accountable. And who am I to say so? But they probably should be, right? I mean, they're running the whole ship. And another crazy part about it is this happened back in 2020. Over a year ago it happened, and some of the providers are still waiting on payment. Almost 18 months later, affected hospitals lost hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue.
Yeah, I think the last tally I heard was the total number, all things accounted for, is estimated to be over $2 billion of an impact from this breach. Um,
Unbelievable.
yeah, the systemic risk was certainly laid bare in this case. It wasn't a breach of one company; it was a breach of the entire healthcare economy.
And kind of to that point I made earlier is, should any one company have this much control over something? The breach really changed the game.
Yeah. So, we can learn and take away a few things from this, right? We should always sort of do an after action review, and how do we get better and how do we prevent these things. So, number one, foundational security controls like multi-factor are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We've said it, I think, every time we've done one of these
Mhm.
shows, and it remains a standard. It's one of the simplest things that we can do. Third party risk is real. Number two, your cybersecurity is really only as strong as your partners. And frankly, if you don't know how they're managing their security, you need to ask.
Yeah, vet them
It's
out.
as much your responsibility as it is
Yeah.
theirs. Number three, again, foundational patching and credential hygiene matter. Remote access is still one of the primary ways that hackers get in. And number four, ransomware groups operate like businesses. We talked a little bit about this earlier. There's general contractors, there's subs, there's people providing the tools, there's people executing the tools.
Have they
Um,
unionized yet?
it's maybe. I wouldn't be surprised, to
They
be
should.
honest.
They should. They'll get better benefits.
Yeah. Could you imagine a mafia or a mob for the underworld of the underworld? Like it becomes very meta. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
negotiations, payments, exit scams, it's all part of a very dark economy.
Yeah, and in healthcare, the stakes are higher. I mean, you have lives on the line, so you have to make decisions, much more quickly. So it's, resilience. It's not just defense. You got to ask, can your organization function without the digital systems for 24 to 72 hours? I mean, can you? And I mean, look at what all these healthcare organizations had to do. Like you said, knuckle busters using, pen and paper, that they had to. And do you have offline backups, manual contingencies? Have you tested them? That's a big one. Have you tested them and test them
Yeah,
often? Yeah, we did like 4 years ago when we set this all up. We tested it. Yeah, right.
yeah.
What?
It that little, for any Seinfeld fans out there, and I'm starting to show my age when I make this reference, but there's an episode where Jerry does a reservation with a car rental agency, and he gets to the airport. He goes to pick it up, and they've given his car, but they don't have a car, and he's like, you know how to take the reservation, you know how to hold the reservation. And to me, that's this, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to have an incident response plan, but if you don't know how to test it and use it, it's
Then you
almost
don't
as
know how
good
to
as not having it.
hold
You
that
don't know.
reservation.
Right, right. So yeah, cybersecurity. I talk about this all the time. I feel like you and I have talked about this on here. It's not just an IT issue. It's operational continuity. It's, executive leadership responsibility. It's public health in this case, and ultimately it's trust.
Yep. And so what can you do here? Get ready to have a drink. So secure remote access, use MFA, don't expose services to the internet. Vet your vendors. You have to know it's your responsibility. Demand audits, ask questions, have an incident response plan, and test it as often with tabletop exercises. And just assume breach, designed for survival, not just prevention.
Yeah. The Change Healthcare breach, it wasn't just a cybercrime, it was a healthcare emergency for over half of the US.
Yeah, uh, because when your systems go down, care slows, lives are hanging the balance, and the ripple effect can last for months or years.
So, lots learned there. A lot of things we've already heard, but good reminders. But that's it for this episode of True Cyber Crimes. Sorry,
Because in the digital world,
every bite leaves a fingerprint.
we'll talk to you next time, Nick.
Thanks, Chris. See you.